whatnot. Come and get it. You can be my mascot.
This is absolutely unbelievable stuff.
In this most unpredictable of seasons, it took him 10 Grand Prix to get back to the top step of the podium. But when he did, it was a generational drive from a generational talent. Max Verstappen leaving no doubt as to his legendary status in this sport with one of the great drives of his or any generation. And with a double Alpine podium, a beautiful day for the French team and French drivers that sees them rise 3 places in the Constructors' Championship. Welcome to your post-race show here on F1 TV with me, Will Buxton, with multiple IndyCar winner James Hinchcliffe. Hinch, have you been able to gather your breath after the end of that one?
I was going to make that joke. I'm still trying to catch my breath, but it's not from the run all the way from the commentary box down to here. It's just from that race, man. It had everything. We had passes for the lead, crazy strategy calls. We had rain. We had different tire strategies. We had safety cars. We had red flags. I don't know what we were missing.
Not a lot.
Not a lot.
Not a lot. It was such a phenomenal drive from Max Verstappen. P17 on the grid to a nearly 20-second lead at the flag. He now leads this World Championship by 62 points. Lando Norris needs 21 points every single weekend for the rest of the season. If that wasn't the kind of swing-back display from a world champion, I don't know what is. A phenomenal performance.
It's almost been boiling up, hasn't it? Because it's been okay performances, good damage limitation performances for Max for the last 6-7 Grand Prix, but he hasn't really had that standout return to form that I think everybody's been expecting at some point. Up to this point, he hadn't finished within 19 seconds of the winner of a Grand Prix in the last 10 races. Now he was 20 seconds ahead of second place. That swing was massive, and from 17th on the grid.
It was absolutely huge. And so many of Max Verstappen's recent drives have come in him, I think, pulling something exceptional out from a car that was far from exceptional. Today, when the rain fell, car performance, everybody always argues, is somewhat equalized in those scenarios. Max made the difference. It was a phenomenal run from him. But a quick word about Alpine. We'll get into this more during the show itself, but we can see what it means to Esteban Ocon, to Pierre Gasly. That is 3 places in the Constructors' Championship. They hadn't finished in the top 8 this season. 2 drivers on the podium from 9th to 6th.
It's unbelievable. I mean, I don't think there's a scenario that team ever even thought they could make that sort of jump by the end of the season, never mind by the end of the day.
Yeah.
Even with Esteban having that great qualifying performance, that was such a tall ask, such a tall order. But this one was a strategy call. I mean, to get them up to the front was that bold call to stay out, wait for that red flag, which they got, and then both drivers did such a good job running mistake-free. That is so hard to do today. How many drivers did we see off around in the wall today? Yeah. Those guys under immense pressure, knowing how much was on the line for them and their team. Neither one of them faltered, and it was absolutely beautiful.
What a brilliant 3 races it's actually been for Alpine, though. Since they brought that upgrade to Austin, Gasly had to pace that race. Esteban had to wait for the upgrade to come. Then Gasly again phenomenal in Mexico, and this weekend, both drivers, Gasly scoring yesterday, both today, Esteban that brilliant qualifying, and Pierre 13th on the grid to 3rd on the podium at the end. I mean, I take my hat off to them. I take my hat off to Ollie Oakes, actually, as well, since he's come in as team principal, and to all the boys and girls over there at Enstone. They got their head down. They were 19th and 20th in Bahrain at the start of this season. They were slowest. The car was overweight. It looked like there was little hope of anything coming back from this season. They got their head down. They got the job done.
No, they did. I mean, it's just incredible. It's the kind of effort that you want to see. It's that, that never give up attitude. It sounds sort of cliche, but it's so true and so appropriate here in Formula One. And we welcome onto the show one of the stars of the day,
one of the stars of the weekend, Yuki. A battling drive out there today. Such difficult conditions. How was it behind the wheel?
Very tricky. Try to stay as much as possible in calm and focus to always stay in the track, and especially at one point when rain comes very strong. Oh, that was driving like on the water, on the sea, and just floating around.
Absolutely incredible. How do you keep the thing on the track when there is that much water, when you're on those tires? it was just a phenomenal. Hello, you come in. You come on in. Come on in.
Awkwardly, just tap on your shoulder there. So.
Both of you. But just asking you guys, ask you both. How do you keep the car on the island when there's that much water and you're on inters that are degrading?
I nearly crashed probably 10 times. I don't know about you, but it was very sketchy. Even coming into the pit lane, we made the call to stop, and I came into the pit lane and I wasn't stopping. And I was aiming straight for the tire wall, the barrier at the pit entrance, and it just gripped before then. So, I mean, obviously fair play to Alpine for staying out and surviving it. Obviously that's what we should have done. But I think we also lost quite a lot of time earlier with the spin with Piastri as well. So, yeah, crazy race.
Crazy's just about right. Yuki, it's been a good day for the team in terms of the points that you've managed to bring home, but how hard was it going into qualifying this morning, straight into the Grand Prix, not just for you guys, but for the whole team? Because I know the boys have been here since 4 o'clock in the morning. Didn't
have much time even drink cup espresso, you know, that's my that's my routine, but I just have to rush to drink, you know, espresso, which is not the most comfortable thing, but at least it still worked, you know, like first team was pretty good, stayed in P3. Yeah, just like Liam said, you know, we switched to extreme. The switching extreme was really good, but just you know, didn't came towards us just with a red flag. You know, it couldn't be really, really good because we were lapping probably 5 seconds faster than others, but just didn't have luck.
It seemed like after the red flag, the pace sort of seemed to disappear that you'd had earlier in the race. Did you struggle on that set of inters on that restart?
The inters, I struggled a little bit in the beginning. I don't know what was there, but also other cars was pretty fast, you know, especially Alpine. Fair to say they had a pretty strong race car, and probably I've been clean air in first thing, that's why I able to keep them behind, but once they have clean air, they were flying, so it's a bit shame that Pierre got a bit of luck and, you know, became P3, and they overtook in constructors now in P6, but we're back strong.
And Liam, for you, such an up and down day, tipped into a spin, running off the track, but still a brilliant points haul. And at the end, that defensive drive that you were putting in, you had to be inch perfect to keep behind a Red Bull and a Mercedes, which on any normal day, we'd expect to be in a position of authority over you guys. Yeah,
it was just every lap, exit turn 12, last corner, focusing on getting maximum traction. It was the main place I was using the rear tires because we were a bit the opposite. We were strong at the start of the stint after the red flag, but everyone was in a train and we couldn't really use it, and then it sort of faded away for us. So, yeah, partly because of the pressure from behind, I would say, you know, spent a lot of time defending, but yeah, it was a lot of concentration.
Beautiful stuff, boys. Well done. Thanks for coming on the show. We really appreciate it. Great drives from both of you. Thank you so much. Right, let's go back to the studio and to Sam, because Sam, there's been so much to talk about in today's Grand Prix. So many flash points going all the way back to the start.
In fact, this goes back to before the start, Will. Look on my screen here. I've got the onboard camera from Esteban Ocon, and I've got to say, Alpine have done everything right today. Yuki Tsunoda, we just heard from him. He sat there. Lando Norris, George Russell sitting in front of him at the start of the race that never was. Now, I want you all to keep your eyes on the start gantry up here and see what you can see, because I know what I'm about to see. Now, the lights come on. Let's have a look. Lance Stroll's car is stranded in the first sector, and you can see there, aborted start. The lights are on, it's clear. Now, what happens at this point in the cockpit of the Alpine? The radio crackles into life, and Esteban Ocon says, do I just stay here? And the team says, yeah, just stay there, put this mode on, and we'll come to you. Meanwhile, look what happens to these other 3 drivers. The lights change. Lando Norris sets off, George Russell sets off, Yuki Tsunoda sets off, Esteban Ocon stays sat there and asks, well, what am I doing here? And eventually the team told him to set off after them. But these 3 drivers here, they're going to have to go to race control fairly soon to report what they were doing there, because that does look to be a breach of the regulation. Will, James, I think this one is going to run and run, and it could have championship permutations.
Yeah, you're right, Sam, and it was such a basic error right at the, as Sam was saying, before the race had even started. An aborted start is not the same thing as an extra formation lap. And when you're sitting on the grid and your team clearly tell you to go, Orlando decided to go by himself, we're not entirely sure just yet exactly how that unfolded at McLaren. That is, like, that's basic.
It is, and this is where, and I mentioned this on the broadcast. I'm giving Lando a bit of a pass here. You know, you're starting on pole of a Grand Prix. There's lots of stuff going through your mind, lots of procedures that you have to know and execute in perfect, order to make that start happen. The aborted start happens. It's not a common thing. It's not the rarest thing, but it certainly doesn't happen every weekend. There's a team of people on the stand that should be able to key up immediately and say, hey, here's the procedure, just a reminder. Yes, it is. Technically, there's an impetus on the driver to know the rules inside and out, but in that moment, there's a lot going on in a driver's mind. It would have been nice to see someone from McLaren, someone from Mercedes, someone from VCARB getting on the radio to those drivers and saying, hey, stay put, that's what the procedure is, like what Esteban Ocon had.
Yeah, it's a very good point. Lando Norris, Yuki Tsunoda, Liam Lawson, and George Russell will all have to go to the stewards to explain why they left on an aborted start. So the final finishing positions, after all of that positive chat with those two lovely guys, maybe for naught. We will see exactly what happens, likely after we go off air. So keep your eyes peeled to F1's social media channels in order to figure out exactly what happens there. Lando Norris did not have his day of days, I think it's fair to say, on a Grand Prix where Max Verstappen showed his absolute best. Lando Norris showed nowhere near. Let's hear from him.
Lando, so much going on out there, P6 at the end of it. Maybe we can start with the VSC fairly early in the race, pitting under that, the red flag that followed, of course. Can we get your take on that?
Yeah, you can change your tyres under the red flag, is what the others did, so just unlucky. Unfortunate, sometimes it just goes your way, so nothing we did wrong. I don't get what people say. Staying out was not the right thing to do. It shouldn't have been red flagged, but obviously that was the crash in the end which caused the red, so just that's life sometimes. You take a gamble, it's paid off for them. It's not talent or, it's just luck. So a bit unlucky this one.
I mean, what about the rest of the race? Just how difficult were the conditions out there, and where does this leave you heading into the final triple header of the season?
Yeah, I mean, I still made a couple of mistakes in the end. I had cars on my left, on my right. I locked the rears. I went off. I lost 2 positions. So a little bit unfortunate there. Just my own fault. So not a perfect race for me, but I think no matter what, 4th was the best anyone could do today of the people who boxed and didn't get lucky. But otherwise, just keep our heads down.
Thanks, Lando.
He speaks a lot about luck there. Hinch, arguably in this game, you make your own luck. Alpine, as we've been hearing already, that was their strategy. That was what they determined to do. They held out for that red flag. But taking it down to the mistakes that Lando made on his own, Verstappen today proved once again that he is the best in this sport. In order to beat the best, you have to be better than the best. Does Lando yet have enough in his racing armory to win a world championship?
To win a world championship against Max right now, I don't think so. I think there's still a few issues, and Lando's usually the first one to put his hand up and say, hey, I need to be better at X, Y, Z. And right now, Max is just so complete. Even when his car's not there, he'll pull out a result that it probably doesn't deserve. And it's just so impressive. I mean, Lando still makes little mistakes every once in a while. You can still win a championship and do that, but it's tough to win a championship against Max Verstappen and still do that. So it's a tough question to answer. He said, I don't think we did anything wrong today. I'm going to respectfully disagree with that. I think the team did something wrong today. But plays devil's advocate to myself here. When you're not leading, it's a lot easier to just do the opposite, right? You do the opposite of leaders, do something different. If you do the same thing, it's going to be tough to beat them. You could use that argument for why McLaren didn't try to do the opposite of Russell, but also the two of them were in a similar boat. You can see why they went a similar path and why the cars behind did something different. Max had to do something different. Yeah. It was going to be very hard to just drive through the field.
I mean, he pretty much did.
He got halfway there. He got more than halfway there. Don't get me wrong. But ultimately, they benefited from that strategy, as Alpine did. And then of the top 3 running when that red flag came out, that track position was king. They were the top 3 at the end of the Grand Prix.
Because we've noted what happened before the start. Then there was the start itself, in which he lost the lead to George Russell. Then there's the decision to pit. Then there's mistakes out on track. Then there's the switching of positions with Piastri, but Lando not being able to make any advance on Charles Leclerc ahead of him. Now, I know there's the caveat that Mercedes changed their McLaren, sorry, changed their rear wing from that medium downforce new spec that they brought specifically for this track and this weekend to a higher downforce one to deal with the rain, which might not have given him the straight line speed that he'd had for the sprint. But are there enough elements within that to say, well, actually, there were enough mistakes there that some of this does actually come down to your driving today?
For sure. And again, you don't have to have many small issues when you're going against Verstappen. Like, Max is just so unique at this point in his career, in this grid particularly. There is no weakness in Max's armor.
And he
right
was
now.
ruthless today.
He always has been.
There was no DRS
Yeah.
for the entire race. He found the grip. He found the placement. Those... I'm not going to call them a dive bomb because dive bomb moves have been associated now with running somebody out of road. But to be that late on his move on Piastri, Oscar didn't even know he was there. And because you don't expect someone to have a go from that far back.
No, exactly right. Like, I think I said it at the time. I'm not sure Oscar even knew he was coming. I'm not sure Max knew he was going until he got to the brake zone. And the same again when he took the lead from Esteban. You know, he's in line with the car in front, hits the brakes, realizes
ridiculous.
realizes that, hey,
so far back.
I could come off the brakes a little bit here, roll the speed. And the other thing, too, is it's so undramatic. He's not locking up. He doesn't have any oversteer moments on exit.
He's not running wide.
So in control through the whole maneuver. And that's what was so impressive about him today and we talk about it a lot with Max, right? When it's low grip, first lap of a weekend, he can be just devastatingly quicker than most drivers can on that first run. He just did that all day, you know, in these tough low grip conditions. It's so impressive.
Absolutely phenomenal drive. Phenomenal drive. Now he may be under investigation, so this may all change, but George Russell up to 6th in the Drivers' Championship today. Let's hear from him.
George, so much going on out there today. You're leading the early stages and then pitting under the VSC, the red flag situation. Can we start with that and get your take on it?
Well, my take is if we stayed out, we'd have been first at the restart, ahead of Ocon and Max and Gasly. And leading from the front is much easier. Where we could have ended up, I don't know, but you know, I was pretty angry at the time because I wanted to stay out.
Just how difficult were the conditions out there in general today, and where does this leave you ahead of the final triple header of the season?
Yeah, I mean, it was very challenging, but we were comfortable in those first 30 laps. Everything was under control. We had a 12-second gap to P3, just managing my gap with Lando. Obviously, those 3 laps were very, very difficult in the middle, and that's why I wanted to stay, because I felt very, very confident this would go safety car or red flag. And inevitably it did, because it was undrivable then.
Thanks, George.
It's intriguing, isn't it, that Lando called the team out for calling him in when they did, but he'd been actually asking the team to call him in even earlier. George was actually telling the team that he wanted to stay out despite those conditions worsening, despite the fact that his tyres were worsening, and we're almost at a slick to mediate stage.
And ultimately, all of it was wrong. Pitting earlier would have been wrong, and you know, I guess for Russell, pitting later would have worked if it had been timed right with that red. So maybe he was right. But yeah, look, it's tough. It is so tough. And today got rewarded by the groups, by the teams that made the right call at the right time. We always knew that was going to be a part of today. The strategist's dream, as Ruth liked to say. And the teams that got the call right, got the track position, and were able to hold on to it, that's motor racing. So yeah, you can look back on it and look at what you did differently than them, what information you had that was different from them, why they made that decision versus yours. And again, sometimes it might just be we did the opposite of what the leaders did, and it's not really a pat yourself on the back for making a good call. Yeah. You just did the opposite. It's so tricky in these conditions.
Got to say, Lewis Hamilton today looked like he was having an absolute horror show for the first half of the race. Not the Lewis Hamilton that we know and love to see out on the racetrack. The second of the half of the race, it started to seem to come to him more. There was more of that Lewis that we know behind the wheel, but still, I think a weekend that he's going to want to forget. He's not been comfortable or happy since the very first practice session of the weekend.
Yeah, I mean, dry, wet, cooler conditions, hotter conditions. He's really just been unsettled with this race car, as we've seen so many weekends this year with him and that Mercedes. It's been a tough slog. You're right, that second half of the race, it looked like maybe he was a little bit more comfortable, having a bit more fun, a couple good battles on track. but still not enough pace to get around Liam Lawson, to try to get around, some of those other cars and get himself higher up the points. So ultimately, he'll still be frustrated. Highlight of Hamilton's day was still before the race even started.
Absolutely, yeah, driving Ayrton Senna's MP4 5B. Sergio Perez was in a fight with Lewis Hamilton for quite a lot of that race. He had a spin on lap 1, finished just outside the points in P11. But another tricky day for him, particularly when you see the battle he had with Lawson, for example, where Lawson came out on top, the performance of Tsunoda as well. Another tricky day for Sergio Perez.
Yeah, I mean, again, we see the potential in the car with Max winning by 20 seconds, whatever it was. The first lap spin, I'd have to see it again. I forget if he got tipped or just sort of did it on his own. Yes, sloppy mistake, I guess. Was having a pretty good comeback drive, though. The red flag certainly helped. He was having some really good overtakes earlier in that comeback. Really confident on the brakes, really deep on the brakes, into 1, into 4. But then that incident with Lawson, like you say, threw him off, allowed Hamilton to get by when he dropped the wheels there out of turn 4. So still just a few mistakes and just, a bit of a scrappy day all in all.
We talk about a scrappy day down in P12. Oliver Behrman, who wasn't even expecting to race this weekend, all things considered, equipped himself, I gotta say, pretty well. Never driven a Formula One car in the wet, and to throw yourself into that on a day like this, tricky business. Had some scrapes out there on track, but did he have some fun?
Ollie, an incident-filled day out there. The contact with Colapinto and Joe, and the crash later on in the race as well. Can we just get your thoughts on how all of that unfolded, please?
Yeah, it was a tough race. Too many mistakes from my side, and that really compromised our race. I think, on one side, we finished P12 quite close to the points, despite the amount of mistakes I made. On the other side, too many mistakes, too many time losses and stuff like that. So yeah, it was a really tough day. I learned a lot, that's for sure, for the next time.
It's always a lot to ask to jump in, and these weather conditions as well. Do you still feel like you can take a lot from this weekend and learning and heading into next year?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, first of all, I learned the track, which I wasn't going to be able to do before next year. Then, of course, racing in these conditions under the water, it's quite rare that you get to do so. So every lap in the wet is really valuable, and I managed to do a lot today, so I'm quite happy with that thing. Excellent.
Ollie looks really disappointed. I was disappointed with the steward's decision on him. I thought that 10 seconds was incredibly harsh, given that he lost more time spinning than Colapinto did with him hitting him.
I can't really add much to that, because I have no idea where it came from or why. I mean, I get it, there was contact, but it didn't appear to damage Colapinto's car. Maybe it did, we don't know, but they wouldn't have known much more than what we knew. And yeah, he misjudged it, got in the back of him, it spun, went around. Colapinto kept going, didn't even go off the racetrack. So I'm kind of with you. Ollie was pretty confused by it on the radio. You were confused by it. I was confused by it. I'm not entirely sure.
A word for 2 penalty points I'm just hearing for Ollie Behrman for that as well. Day just keeps getting better for him. Valtteri Bottas, P13, a couple of places out of the points, but on another day with another couple of incidents. That's Sauber's first points of the season. I'm trying to put a positive light on it, because for all the girls and boys down there, I just want them to score a point. I just want them to have something this season.
Yeah, look, it's tough. And the again, devil's advocate, the pessimist of it will say, yeah, but don't forget 5 cars didn't finish. But he did have a great qualifying in the dry. In the wet, in the sprint race. Sorry, in the dry and the sprint race. He's had pace. Let me start over. He's had pace this weekend. The car did improve a little bit around Austin. Got into Q2 in Mexico. They're making progress. It's not points yet, but it's progress, and that's the direction you want to be going. And especially, again, he's still trying to hang on to that hope of being in that car next year. So these days, these essentially elongated test sessions, be it in the wet or in the dry, are so crucial for that team, and hopefully for him if he ends up in that seat.
We had 5 drivers didn't reach the finish of the Grand Prix today. One driver who very nearly didn't finish the Grand Prix, but did, to try to give something back to the mechanics that rebuilt his car. Fernando Alonso, we could hear the pain he was in at the end.
I was shocked. I mean, you could I think on that radio transmission, you heard like a in the middle of his sentence. And that's very F1 2022, but we really haven't heard drivers complaining like that about that sort of issue, especially in the wet. But Mercedes have been having issues with hitting the bumps and the drivers being in physical pain in FP1 on Friday. So it's something to do with the repave here. It's been a huge challenge. credit to them for sticking through it. The Aston mechanics, they did a great job getting both those cars going. One of them out before the race even started, and Fernando just struggling through it.
Yeah, I mean, for all of that work from the team, for Lance to bin it before the race even began, look, we don't know if something, a bit of finger trouble maybe hadn't been put together at the back of the rear of that car that caused that, if it is a driver error. I don't know what you can say about that. Like, after all the work the team's done to get him on the grid, it's so disappointing. And then
I'm willing, yeah.
He had the opportunity to get it back on the black stuff, and he just drove it straight into the gravel.
Yeah, I'm willing to give him, look, the car was apart, it's built back together, maybe there was some sort of issue, but what took him out of the race wasn't that. What took him out of the race was driving through the gravel trap. He's going to look back at that and be kicking himself. In hindsight, not a very good move. He was on the pavement, he was out of the gravel, and he just drove himself into the gravel, which is designed to slow down cars that are going fast. It's one of those things in the moment, he's just not even thinking about that. He's just trying to find the shortest route back to the racing surface, and unfortunately it bit him.
Lance Stroll out before the race even began, which means that, incredibly, he's classified beneath a driver that didn't even start the Grand Prix, Alex Albon, because, of course, he had that massive accident during qualifying. The next driver was Nico Hülkenberg, because we had a DNF, a DNS, and now a DQ. Disqualification for Nico Hülkenberg. Spun, got himself beached on the banking. If you guys don't know, when this track was opened, where those grandstands are at turn 1 and all the way running down, that was a banked turn 1 in the old days, and he got himself beached on the banking down there. Now, the marshals came to the car and pushed him back so that he could actually get back onto the racetrack. They're not allowed to do that. You're not allowed to have outside help on the car. And so because of that, he was disqualified. For me, there's a discrepancy here because, as I understand it, the black flag is not a penalty that can actually be applied during the race. A disqualification has to be applied after the race. So that's a bit of a stewarding weirdness anomaly for me. But rules is rules. Let's move to Franco Colapinto, meanwhile. So much pressure on his young shoulders this weekend. The crash in quali, the crash during the race. A very expensive weekend for Williams at the height of this cost cap era.
Yeah, it's a tough blow for sure. And then add insult to injury, losing a place in the constructors because of Alpine's great day. And this one's so tough. Under safety car, trying to catch up to the field on those cold inters. Big oversteer, big overcorrection, pitches them into the wall. We saw so many drivers come very close to doing the same thing. The conditions out there were treacherous. You have a driver doing his first laps in the wet this weekend in a Formula One car. Accidents are going to happen. But the timing of it, yeah, it's bad for him. It's bad for the team. It's just a very rough day for all the men and women at Williams.
Yeah, really hard day for them. A tricky and tough day for Ferrari as well. Carlos Sainz, the other car that didn't see the checkered flag today. Impact with the barriers. Looked like he was going to retire from the race anyway, but the stewards touched the car, Marshall, sorry, touched the car. And again, he has been noted from that, has to go and explain himself to the stewards after the Grand Prix, but retired anyway. A tough day for Ferrari on the back of 2 brilliant weekends where they won both Grand Prix.
All good things must come to an end, right? And that streak for them, unfortunately, that happened today. Just dropping the wheels on the paint. It's rule number 1 in wet racing, wet weather racing. The paint can be so slippery. The curbs can be so slippery. You have to just feel those out as the Grand Prix goes on. I'm not saying he was aiming for that. It was kind of a mistake that, again, you're pushing, you're looking at the apex of the corner, he's not even paying as close attention. And if you're driving this place in the dry, you've done that muscle memory. That's where you go. You use every bit of racetrack on entry in the dry, and you just went a little bit too far. You heard the rears instantly lock, engine dead, in the wall, tough day. And Leclerc just not really having the pace in the wet that they were hoping. And yeah, not a strong day points-wise. Red Bull making a big swing back towards them in the constructors now.
The only driver we haven't mentioned so far, Oscar Piastri. A tricky day for him as well, having finished second in the sprint, got a 10-second penalty, which pushed him down to 8th at the flag.
Oscar, so much going on out there today. Maybe we could start with the penalty, with the incident with Liam. Can we get your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, it was deserved. They didn't get far enough up and yeah, tagged his left rear, so I apologise in the red flag. Yeah, just one of those days, I would say.
What about the rest of the race? I mean, just how difficult were conditions out there, and where does this leave you heading into the final triple header of the season?
Yeah, it was tricky. Just trying to stay on track at some points was very, very tough. So, yeah, obviously disappointing, but I think some things to review, and a nice little reset now before the last triple header.
Thanks, Oscar.
Reset is what Piastri and I think Lando probably need after this weekend. Not at all what either of them were expecting. Now, I'm hearing that Mercedes have also been called to the stewards for allegedly changing their tyre pressures on the grid in the amount of time when the tyres are put on the car that you're not actually allowed to do anything in terms of tyre pressure. So Mercedes being called to see the stewards are going to be busy.
I mean, they had to defer the whole start fiasco to after the race anyway, because that was going to take a lot of time to dive into, and there was still a lot of action happening on track.
It's just as well we held the race a couple of hours early. Ariana Bravo is with Alpine team principal Oliver Oakes.
Ollie, huge congratulations. I mean, what a result. How are you feeling? You haven't stopped grinning.
Yeah, and I don't smile much, actually, no. It was a big result today, and obviously, yeah, just credit to everyone across Sandstone and Viri. It's a good day for us.
Just talk us through that race from your perspective, how it was unfolding. I mean, it was one thing after another. It was the threat of rain. Just talk us through what was going on the pit lane.
I was actually trying to recap it. I was thinking first you had the aborted start, where everyone wasn't sure what was going on, and then obviously staying out longer when we did. We're confident it was the right choice, but it's never that straightforward at the time.
Was that led by one of the drivers, or was that the strategy team?
Was there a drive? I give credit to? No, it was a bit of everybody, to be honest. I think in those situations, you take confidence from what the drivers tell you they want to do. You back your guys and girls who are making the calls, and honestly, it was a team effort. Yeah.
And how are you feeling now? I mean, this is a huge points haul for the team. How does that feel? How are you feeling about that battle? We were just speaking to Laurent, and he was saying what a hit that is.
Yeah, I mean, look, I arrived in the team, as you know, just before the shutdown. I would say it was probably wrong to say I wasn't really that bothered about climbing back up the championship. It was more about what we're doing now, where we want to get to. Obviously, today is a big result. It doesn't change really what we're already doing. If anything, it's just more credit for everybody. And obviously the last few races since we brought an upgrade to Austin have been really strong, and we have to continue that. For us, it doesn't, does change things. I'm aware of that for everybody, but I think we've got to stay humble and keep pushing.
Well, enjoy celebrating this one. I mean, it's lovely to see the spring in all of your steppers. Yeah, fantastic. Congratulations, Ollie.
Thanks a lot. See you later.
I like that humility from Ollie Oakes. The changes at that team in terms of leadership over the last 18 months have been profound. They've had such an impact on the team, from sort of the weird pushing out of Otmar, bringing in Bruno Famin, who didn't really ever seem to have any direction for where he was going to take the team. And since Ollie's taken over, it does feel like a place reinvigorated.
Yeah, it's been very tumultuous there, and it's been inconsistent. And look, we know in motorsports, consistency is huge. If you can have a consistent crew, consistent leader, consistent culture at a group, it can really help grow. And it's like you say, it's amazing that in such a short time, there's been that culture shift, but everybody's bought in immediately. So clearly he comes with good credentials. He's somebody that the crew trusts and is pushing the team in the right direction. It's great to see some of that effort being rewarded on the racetrack.
And all at a time when there's sort of the added complications of the fact that they're shutting down the F1 engine operations over at Viry-Châtillon. They should be taking Mercedes engines into the future, which could be a big leap for them. But all of that disruption and coming together like this. There's 3 races to go. It's still very tight out there, but what a phenomenal job from them. We had touched on Charles Leclerc very briefly there. A tricky weekend for him, kind of in no man's land today.
Yeah, they didn't have the kind of devastating pace, that we saw in Austin or in Mexico, and sometimes they had it over one lap. In Austin, it was more about their race pace. Here, they were best of the rest, I guess. I mean, here's the thing. McLaren were just the class of the field all weekend long, really, both in the dry, especially in the dry, but obviously Lando doing an incredible job in the wet in qualifying. Race not playing out that way, but Yeah, they just never had that spark, did they? It was just kind of a, I don't want to say damage limitation, but it was a salvage what you can sort of weekend for both of them. They were both going to score points before the issue for Carlos. But yeah, it was just a bit anonymous, wasn't it?
A little bit, a little bit. Three drivers who were not anonymous today are your top three. Pierre Gasly, Esteban Ocon, and race winner, once again, Max Verstappen.
Pierre, P3, double podium finish for Alpine. Tell me how you're feeling right now. I imagine it's pretty good.
Yeah, I want to say so many words, but I need to calm down, otherwise. Gotta watch for my language, but I'm so happy. I'm so proud of all the guys in the team. It's unbelievable. It's historical for the team. We had such a tough season, and you know, there've been a lot said about our team. It's been difficult. We've been talking a lot about us, not quite positively, but at the end of the day, we always stayed united and we never gave up. Even against all odds, no one would have believed that even one Alpine can make it on the podium this year, and we made it too. And I'm so proud of the guys for always pushing, always delivering their best. Whether it's back in Enstone, in Viry, at the track, we always try to put our best. And on a day like today, our best was absolutely incredible. So both cars on the podium. There is so much to say, but yeah, it was from P13. I'm very happy with that P3.
Esteban, big congratulations. P2, double podium finish for Alpine. That's the stuff dreams are made of for the team, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't know if we are in the reality right now or if we are still in a dream. You know, the alarm rang this morning at 4:30 and we had no idea that today was going to be such a day. The qualifying was incredible, but today we are leading the race. Like, we haven't been further up than P10 this year, or P9. You know, it's been incredible to being able to fight. You know, it feels so good. You know, spending so much time in the midfield, struggling. You kind of think, you know, when is my time gonna come? And today really it shows that if we all had the same car, you know, we would be able, you know, to fight at the front. There was never a doubt, but you know, it takes so long for us to sometimes, you know, have such result that, you know, today it really reassures and gives confidence about what we can do. But yeah, so great that, you know, on the rain we can still see that, you know, the cars, they level out in some tracks, and I think that was not going to be a thing anymore, but it was today.
Max, big congratulations. After that tricky qualifying session this morning and the engine grid penalty, what did you think was possible?
Honestly, I mean, of course I was very frustrated with qualifying, but yeah, we just tried to just use it as a good motivation in the race, and luckily we had a great start. And yeah, from there onwards, we were just, you know, having a really good feeling in the car, and we made all the right calls again, stayed calm, and executed when we needed to. So incredibly happy with today. I mean, honestly, crazy. I never expected to go from P17 to P1. I was hoping for good points, but this is absolutely crazy.
Outscoring Lando, of course. 3 races to go. Does this feel like a big step towards that 4th title?
Now it's of course a great result. I mean, which, if you look a few hours ago, was definitely the other way around, you know, so looking like we were going to lose a lot of points. So I'm very, very happy, but still 3 tough races, and we need to just stay calm and yeah, make no mistakes.
Thanks, Max. Well done.
And make no mistakes was exactly what Max Verstappen did today. An absolutely sensational drive. We now take a couple of weeks off, but the next Grand Prix is one of the biggest of the year in Las Vegas. Here is where you can see everything from Sin City. It all kicks off a little bit later than normal. Weekend warm-up comes along at 4 a.m. 4 a.m. on the 21st of November. Then on the 22nd, practice 1 at 6:15 local time, practice 2 at 9:45. Practice 3 comes your way at 6:15 and qualifying 9:30 p.m. with the race itself at 10 to 9 on race day. Hinch, your final thoughts on a race day, a race weekend that really had it all?
It did have it all. It was fun to watch it all. It was grueling to watch it all. But at the end of the day, all you can really do is congratulate Max Verstappen on another stellar performance. To put it in perspective, how impressive this drive was. In the 1,100 plus history of World Championship races in Formula One, 5 have been won from 17th or lower on the grid. I mean, that's putting you in pretty rarefied air. And it's not like there was some big trick to it. It wasn't a attrition race that got him there. He passed cars in the wet without DRS, called the strategy right to end up front, made the pass for the lead, and walked away with it. By far the most dominating performance for him in the season, and one of the most dominating performances in the history of Formula One.
Can't say any more than that, folks. We'll leave it there. Thank you so much for tuning in over this weekend. Thank you for bearing with us through thick and thin and wet and dry. We leave Brazil now with one message resonating louder than ever. Mess with the bull, get the horns. We'll see you in Las Vegas.